3.8 million Americans paid $400 or more for a brake job last year that their brakes did not need. Not 300,000, not 1 million. 3.8 million people sitting in a service waiting room, trusting a technician they had never met, paying for a safety repair on a system they had no way to independently evaluate, because nobody ever told them about a $6 test that gives them the truth in 60 seconds. $6. Against $400 to $1,200 for a brake service that in nearly 4 million cases last year was recommended before the brakes had reached the wear threshold that actually requires replacement. And the automotive service industry has known about this $6 test since the 1950s. They didn't hide this because it fails. They hid it because it works too well. Stay right here, because what I am about to show you is going to change how you respond to every brake recommendation you ever receive for the rest of your life. And it is going to make you genuinely angry at a system that uses your legitimate fear about brake safety to extract money from your wallet for services your brakes may not yet need. Let me put the real number in front of you. The automotive brake service market in the United States generates over $21 billion annually. $21 billion every year. From American drivers who are told at oil changes, tire rotations, and safety inspections that their brakes are getting low and should be replaced soon. The standard front brake pad replacement service runs between $150 and $400 per axle at most shops. At dealerships, the same service runs between $200 and $600 per axle. Full four-wheel brake jobs, including rotors, at some dealerships run over $1,200. And the brake pad manufacturers, the automotive service chains, and the dealership service departments all share one financial interest: getting you to replace your brake pads as early as possible in their wear life rather than as late as safely possible. Here is the engineering truth that the industry needs you to never understand. Brake pads are designed with a specific wear indicator system built into the pad itself, a small metal tab embedded in the brake pad material at a precise depth. When the pad wears down to the minimum safe thickness, typically 2 to 3 millimeters of remaining friction material, this metal tab contacts the brake rotor surface during braking and produces a specific high-pitched squealing sound. This is your brake wear indicator telling you that pad replacement is now warranted. The system was designed specifically so that drivers could know when replacement is needed without professional measurement equipment. It is a built-in consumer protection device. And the automotive service industry has built a profitable recommendation system around getting you to replace your pads before that indicator ever makes a sound. Think about the last time a shop told you your brakes were getting low. Did they squeal before that visit? If they did not squeal before the service recommendation, there's a significant possibility your pads had remaining service life that the recommendation did not account for, because the squeal indicator is the engineering truth. The visual inspection by a service advisor peering through your wheel spokes and estimating pad thickness by eye is a revenue-generating practice that systematically underestimates remaining brake life. But the brake service industry has one more layer of protection. They know that brakes are a safety system. They know that the word brakes produces fear in every driver in a way that oil changes and alignments do not. You might question an alignment recommendation. You might push back on an air filter upcharge. But when someone in a uniform tells you your brakes are getting low and uses the word safety, almost no American driver pushes back, because the risk of being wrong feels too high. The industry is not just profiting from your ignorance. They are profiting from your completely rational safety instinct. And they know it. And they have built their recommendation sales model directly on top of it. This channel exists to give you the knowledge that makes that fear productive rather than profitable for someone else. We find what the automotive service industry has buried under decades of safety language and technical mystique. We put it in plain language. We hand it directly to you. If you want to stop wasting money on industry lies, subscribe and hit the bell, because the brake service industry is one of the most profitable systems built on information asymmetry in American automotive life. Now, let me take you back to where the knowledge of independent brake assessment actually starts. The year is 1954. The place is a General Motors engineering training facility in Flint, Michigan. A brake systems engineer named Harold Weston is developing training materials for GM dealership service technicians on the newly introduced disc brake systems being phased into American passenger vehicles. Harold is documenting the proper procedure for brake pad wear assessment, the engineering tolerances for minimum safe pad thickness, and the relationship between pad wear indicators and safe replacement intervals. His training materials include a section on consumer accessible brake assessment that describes both the auditory wear indicator system and a simple visual method using a standard tire tread depth gauge, available at any auto parts store for under $6, to measure brake pad thickness through the wheel, spoke opening without removing the wheel. Harold's training materials are distributed to GM dealership technicians as internal service documentation. They are never distributed to car owners. Over the following decades, as brake service becomes one of the highest margin service items in automotive retail, the simple consumer assessment methods Harold documented in Flint in 1954 stay buried inside dealer training manuals, while the industry builds its recommendation model on the information gap they create. Your grandmother already knew this. She used it every single day. Not the brake pad gauge specifically, but the principle of listening to her car. Her generation drove with their windows down more often. They listened to their vehicles. They knew the sounds their car made when everything was right, and they heard the sounds that indicated something was changing. She knew about the squeal. Her mechanic had told her directly that when the brakes start squealing, it is time to come in. Not before, when. That direct practical information was how automotive knowledge was shared before the era of service advisor recommendations, driven by inspection checklists and revenue targets. Now let me explain simply what is happening at the mechanical level when brake pads wear, so you understand exactly what the $6 test is measuring and why the number it gives you is more accurate than a service advisor's visual estimate through your wheel spokes. A disc brake pad is a block of friction material bonded to a steel backing plate. The friction material is the part that contacts the brake rotor surface when you press the brake pedal and converts your vehicle's kinetic energy into heat through friction. New brake pads typically have between 10 and 12 millimeters of friction material thickness. As you drive and brake normally, this friction material wears away gradually. The rate of wear depends on your driving style, the quality of the pad material, your typical driving environment, and whether you drive predominantly highway miles or city stop-and-go miles. At 2 to 3 millimeters of remaining friction material, the metal wear indicator tab embedded in the pad makes contact with the rotor surface during braking. This contact produces the characteristic high-pitched squealing sound that indicates replacement is now warranted. At the mechanical level, the indicator tab is dragging across the rotor surface with each brake application, creating a metal-on-metal contact that produces both the audible warning and a very slight scoring of the rotor surface. The rotor scoring at this stage is minor and typically does not require rotor replacement if the brake service is performed promptly when the indicator sounds. At 1 millimeter or less of remaining friction material, which is what happens when a driver ignores the squeal indicator for an extended period, the backing plate itself begins to contact the rotor surface. This metal-on-metal contact, without any friction material between them, produces a grinding sound rather than a squeal. It causes rapid and significant rotor damage, and it represents a genuine reduction in braking performance. This is the condition that actually warrants urgent attention as a safety matter. The squeal is the warning. The grind is the emergency. The industry has conflated these two stages in consumer communications for decades. By presenting any brake wear as a safety concern requiring prompt replacement, they apply the genuine urgency of the grind stage emergency to the entirely manageable squeal stage warning and to the pre-warning stage where the pad still has significant remaining service life. This conflation is extremely profitable and is built directly on the asymmetry between what the technician can see and what you can see and measure independently. The $6 brake pad gauge eliminates that asymmetry permanently. It gives you the actual measurement, the real number. The engineering truth that tells you exactly where your pads are in their service life without the filter of a service recommendation system that profits from replacing them as early as possible. If you've made it this far, you already know more than 99% of American drivers about how brake wear actually works, what the wear indicators are telling you, and why the service industry recommendation model is built on information they need you to never have independently. Here's exactly what you do. The complete $6 assessment that gives you the same measurement information the shop uses to make their recommendation, allowing you to evaluate that recommendation against real data for the first time. Go to any AutoZone, O'Reilly Auto Parts, Advance Auto Parts, or Walmart Automotive section. You are looking for a brake pad wear gauge or a tire and brake depth gauge. These are small metal or plastic gauges with a sliding pin or a stepped measurement surface designed to measure the remaining depth of brake pad friction material. They cost between $3 and $8 for a reliable unit. Some tire tread depth gauges also have a brake pad measurement scale on the same tool. That is your entire investment. $3 to $8 against $400 to $1,200 for a brake service. Step 1. Park your vehicle on a flat level surface and engage the parking brake. Allow your brakes to cool completely if you have been driving. Do not attempt to assess brake wear on hot brakes. Wait at least 30 minutes after your last drive before beginning the assessment. Step 2. Crouch down beside your front left wheel. Look through the wheel, spoke opening toward the brake rotor, the shiny metal disc visible behind the wheel. Around the outer edge of the rotor, you will see the brake caliper, a rectangular metal clamp that squeezes the brake pads against the rotor when you brake. Look at the interface of the caliper opening. You will see the edge of the brake pad, a dark block of material pressed against the rotor surface. This is what you're measuring. Step 3. Insert the measuring pin of your brake pad gauge through the wheel, spoke opening, and position the tip against the friction material surface of the brake pad. Push the gauge gently until the measuring pin contacts the rotor surface behind the pad. The gauge reading shows you the remaining thickness of the friction material in millimeters. Read the measurement on the gauge scale. Interpret your reading as follows. 8 millimeters or more of remaining friction material means your pads have significant service life remaining. A shop recommendation to replace at this measurement is premature by engineering standards. 4 to 7 millimeters of remaining friction material means your pads are in the middle of their service life. Replacement is not urgent, but you should plan for it in the next year of driving. 2 to 3 millimeters of remaining friction material means your pads are approaching the wear indicator threshold. Plan brake service within the next few thousand miles, and listen for the squeal indicator to begin. Less than 2 millimeters of remaining friction material or any grinding sound during braking means replacement is now warranted as a genuine safety matter. Step 4. Repeat this measurement on all 4 corners of the vehicle. Front left, front right, rear right. Front pads typically wear faster than rear pads because the front brakes do between 60 and 70% of the braking work in most vehicles. Note your measurements for each corner. Compare what you measured to what the shop told you. If your measured friction material is 5 millimeters or more on all 4 corners and your brakes have not been squealing, the recommendation you received likely reflects a conservative service interval rather than a genuine engineering need for immediate replacement. Ask the shop to show you their measurement data in writing. Any reputable shop performing a legitimate brake assessment records actual pad thickness measurements during the inspection. If they cannot provide written measurement data, they were estimating rather than measuring. And estimating from a visual check through a wheel spoke without a gauge is not an assessment you should pay $400 based on. Harold Weston documented the brake pad gauge method in a Flint, Michigan training facility in 1954. Your grandmother listened to her brakes and waited for the squeal the way her mechanic told her to. The automotive service industry needed you to never have the measurement tool that Harold's training materials described. Because a driver with a $6 gauge and 4 numbers written on a piece of paper is a driver who can evaluate a brake service recommendation with actual data instead of trust. Now here's what I need from you. Think about one driver in your life who just got a brake recommendation they could not verify. A parent on a fixed income who cannot afford to question what a shop tells them. A young driver who just got their first car and is being quoted. Brake service, they have no framework to evaluate. A friend who mentioned a big repair quote this week. Send them this video today, right now, before you scroll anywhere else. Because every share keeps alive what the industry tried to erase. Harold Weston documented this in 1954. Your grandmother listened to her brakes the way her generation listened to everything. You continue that chain every time you share this with a driver whose $400 you might just keep where it belongs.